Hi everyone, my name is Debra. I'm an alcoholic. I have been through these steps as they're laid out in the book with two big book step study sponsors, a very loving higher power that I discovered here, and meetings like this. I am still plugging away at amends and try to work the steps to the best of my ability on a daily basis. Thank you for asking me to speak today. I have to say right up front, I'm really nervous. My heart's pounding through my chest, and I don't know why, but my sponsor always said that's God shaking the truth out of me, so it's true. And I was talking right before the meeting to a dear friend, and we were talking about this step, and she said, "Don't worry, you know all about powerlessness." So I said, yeah. Just a brief history to qualify. I came from an alcoholic home. My dad was the alcoholic. My mom was the teetotaler. He was the happy one. She was the miserable one. And, I was Daddy's girl, and so I was his gopher, go for a beer, go to the refrigerator. And so that was my job. And, and he'd always give me a little, and I have a picture in the front of my big book. I think I'm about 17 months old, tipping back a big Mabel black label, Loved it from the get-go. So an alcoholic was born. And then, I came of age at the tail end of the 60s, enough said. I always felt, they talk about restless, irritable, and discontent in this chapter, and I always felt that way. Those are some of my earliest memories. I always felt like I was born into the wrong family. Sometimes I just felt like I wasn't even supposed to be on this planet, I'm going to get this out of my way a little bit, thank you, because I want to be able to see you. So there was always this feeling inside of me that I just didn't fit, just something wasn't right. I went on my merry way off to junior high school, and that was an awakening. I went to this little tiny neighborhood school that was probably about 200 years old at the time, and off to the big new junior high and all kinds of kids, and I was off and running. That's when I really earnestly started drinking and, drank alcoholically from the get-go. I didn't drink every day when I was that young, but every time I drank for the effect. Blackout was my goal. I just love that feeling of being totally out of myself. And of course I thought I was charming and funny and beautiful and a great dancer and all I was doing was this falling down, throwing up drunk. So that continued, and then other stuff was introduced, and this is AA, so I'm going to just stick to the alcohol, but I'm sure you get the idea. I just kept drinking like crazy, and my friends would shake their heads like, they couldn't get it, and I just thought they were all lightweights, or babies, like, what's wrong with you? I really had the phenomena of craving, and so it went on like that, and my boyfriends were all judged about how much alcohol or other substances they could provide me, whether they had nice cars or not, whether they were good dancers or not, all of those really important things. Anyway, I became a mom at a very young age, and back in those days you had to marry, so that was a disaster. That lasted a year, and then I was on my own. With a baby, and the drinking age was 18, and so was I. And I had my own apartment, and I lived next to the package store. It was crazy. And then the parade of crazies kept coming out of the clown car. I'm talking about boyfriends. Yeah, it was ugly for a long, long time. And, my drinking kept progressing because that's what this disease does. And, the other things too. Excuse me. So it went. And then I met the man of my dreams. And he drank and drugged like I did. I'm like, this is perfect. And he was very nice. And he wasn't crazy. And so, I met him. And then he came home with me that night and kept bringing more clothes over. And the next weekend we got a dog. And, and I thought all this was normal. So clueless that my life was so unmanageable. So anyway, many years passed. I drank, by now I'm drinking every day, drinking myself into a stupor, and still trying to get up and go to work, which was so hard. I worked in the early childhood education field. I'd get up, I'm throwing up bile out the other. I was so sick every day and have to go in and teach preschool with the happy face on, and I'm like, oh, and I'm green. And, all I could think of was like, I just can't wait to get out of work. So the whole day I'm not even present. I'm just thinking about when can I get out of here and start pouring alcohol back into my system. That went on for a lot of years. So, fast forward, I'm miserable. I just want to die. I hate everything and everybody in my life. The only person I loved was my cat. And, I just wanted to die. Every day I'd wake up, and my first thought was the F word, because I was still alive. And I'm like, oh, God, something needs to change. But the thought of not drinking never came to my mind. So I thought, I'll learn to meditate. That's going to fix everything. And I went to the mindfulness and meditation program at UMass. And in the application process, I'd forgotten to fill out the application part where it says, do you drink alcohol, do you take drugs? And I skipped that page, went on, filled it out, and sure enough, the woman who called me in for the interview, that's the first thing she noticed. She's like, oh, you skipped the page. I'm like, yeah, I figured I'd go back to it. She's like, well, let's talk about that. And, that was my moment of grace. That was my moment of grace. For the first time in my life, I was honest about how much I was drinking and drugging. And she was amazing. And I'm sitting there and the floodgates opened. It's years of dammed up emotions and she was on this chair with rollers, and she wheeled up to me and held both of my hands, and she said, I just want you to know I'm a friend of Bill's. I'm having this mental breakdown. She's telling me who her friends are. I'm like, I didn't get it. I didn't know who Bill W. was. And I'm thinking, can't she see? Because it's all about me, right? Can't she see I'm in this? And then she explained. And the woman was amazing. She called and canceled the rest of her appointments for the next few hours, and she got on the Worcester Intergroup phone number because she was from New Hampshire, and she wrote down on one of those yellow legal pads every meeting in the Worcester area. And she asked me if I could stay sober for that day, and I said, I don't know, And she said, do you think you could get to a meeting tonight? And I said, yeah. And she said, will you try to do, 90 meetings in 90 days? And I, there was something that happened to me, and I promised her I would. And I'd been making promises my whole life and never kept one, but I kept that one. I could get emotional now. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. I never intended to stop drinking. I never intended, I thought I was going to die an alcoholic death, and I was fine with that. But I went to a meeting that night, and I went every other night, and then I was doing 2 meetings a day, and I did that for years. And when I got my year coin, I sent it to this woman with a thank you letter. I'll be forever grateful. But anyway, to get back to being powerless. So I gave you a little history. I was powerless over alcohol from the get-go. I really came in under the lash of alcoholism. And you don't hear that much anymore. The old-timers used to say that. And I really was. I had lost the ability to choose whether I was going to put alcohol in my system or not. I had lost that a long time. I knew I was an alcoholic years and years before I got here. Even my drinking buddies had stopped drinking with me, and they would say, like, Deb, you really are an alcoholic. And I'm like, yes. So by the end I was drinking home alone, I would drink from the moment I got in the door from work because, I couldn't go out and drink anymore because I was driving in blackouts and it scared me. So I was drinking at home and drinking myself into, unconsciousness all the time. And that's just how my life was. I didn't want to drink because I was getting really sick. I was starting to have a lot of tachycardia and really, my liver, and I never went to the doctor, never, no. But anyway, and so getting to this step. So Dr. Silkworth, thank God, huh? Boy, I think it's a miracle that he was probably one of the only doctors who really understood us, who cared enough to understand us. And the fact that he was so, well-renowned and so, nationally prominent, and that he specialized in trying to save alcoholics' lives. But he knew that, we were hopeless. Most of us who, when we got to him, were hopeless. I was hopeless variety, I really didn't think there was any saving me, and frankly, I didn't really want to be saved. But the fact that, when Bill Wilson went to him, and I think it was his 3rd time around, he acquired certain ideas, and they were of the spiritual variety, that, once he got his body better, he thought that if he could talk to other alcoholics, it might help, and that if they did the same thing with other alcoholics once they got well, that might help. And that's the whole premise of this program, So, my favorite saying is, we were maladjusted to life, Can anybody relate? Jeez. And I looked up maladjusted, being poorly adjusted, lacking harmony or balance. Yeah, I was really off balance, and there was no harmony in my life. But what he talks about is that our bodies were as sick as our minds, which is almost laughable because he doesn't even have to talk about our minds being crazy, right? That's a given. But talking about how alcohol affected our bodies. And he talks about, our bodies were sickened as well as our minds, and for sure. And then he goes on to talk about, the solution is on the spiritual as well as the altruistic plane. So, that we needed to find something, some kind of an idea that could help us, something greater than ourselves. because, I don't know about you, but, this alcoholic was self-centered to the extreme, and I can still be today. And the altruism, I love that. It's giving of oneself, and that's really what it's all about. They talk about the need of moral psychology for us. And moral psychology is dealing with our mental and behavioral processes using principles of morality or principles of conforming to a standard of behavior. That means basically act like other people. It's a tall order for this alcoholic. So anyway, that it lies outside of the synthetic knowledge. So, it's in here. And that the practical, we had to acquire some ideas to put into practical application, which means we really have to start working, to give our full attention. So that's what I had to do, because, for me, it was change or die, for sure, without a doubt. So the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death, that's the fellowship and the faith, the fellowship that we find in the halls of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the faith that we develop here. And I just have to add here, and it's not this step, but the only thing that allowed me to develop a faith which worked for me was in step 3, where they say, God as you understand him. Because what kept me out of Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't know anything about it, but all that you talked about was God, and I just couldn't buy into it. I was really the agnostic. So, the fact that I could develop a higher power of my understanding that fit with my inner being was what saved my life. So, talking about the craving, that phenomenon of craving. And I so understood that, because my whole drinking life, I never had one drink. Never. Once I put alcohol into my system, all bets were off. I had to keep pouring it into me until I couldn't anymore. And I had no control over that. My body just, it took over. And, I was a garbage can. I mean, I could pour anything in there, things I hated, because I knew it was going to get me to where I needed to be. Out of myself, out of reality. I was constantly escaping. And my husband, God bless my husband, honest to God, frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices with us. He was so worried about me. He had stopped drinking, he had stopped drugging years and years ago, and he was watching me kill myself and begging me and telling me how concerned he was. And me being the good alcoholic that I was, I'm giving him the finger and telling him to go, So the frothy emotional appeal didn't work with me, and it says that it won't. It says the message that we receive has to have depth and weight. And the ideal must be grounded in a power greater than ourselves. And that's the stuff I heard here. And that was the freedom I got to listen to all of you and, hear what you said and see your truth and hear your truth. So I stopped being restless, irritable, and discontent. I started, once my body started getting better, and my mind started clearing up, I was able to start to see my life in a whole different way, and that I wasn't a victim, and that I didn't have to be held hostage by alcohol. And, excuse me, and it talks about the different types of alcoholics, and, I was that last type, for a while I thought I was the psychopath who was emotionally unstable. Went through that stage for a long, long time. And, but then I realized that, and I wasn't the manic depressive type, I was just depressive. And, but then I realized that, I was pretty much normal. Can we use that term loosely? Normal, except when it came to alcohol, that it says, these drinkers have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. It may be the manifestation of an allergy which differentiates these people and sets them apart from they're a distinct entity. Okay? So the only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. And it says if that doesn't happen, we're doomed. Doomed is a pretty strong word. I mean, basically that means for me that I'm gonna die. So anyway, if we come in and we accept the plan outlined in this book. So the plan is, try not to drink, try to stay abstinent, just for today. And then start to develop a higher power of your understanding. And then, get a sponsor, and then start working these steps. Accept the plan outlined in this book. That's the steps. And he talks about that guy that he didn't recognize, the guy that had been to him years before, and he came back, and this guy, completely different, healthy, beaming, and he said, here emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. And it was all because he had done this work. So, and the other guy is like, oh, show me how to have the willpower to fight this, to resist the impulse to drink. And my willpower is what got me here, My willpower, was making bad decision after bad decision, sick decisions. I had to get rid of my willpower. So, anyway, I did become sold on the ideas in this book. I had to, and I wanted to. That was the thing. And I went from someone who was so against being an Alcoholics Anonymous, so against getting healthy, so against looking at myself and my own behaviors and my index of maladjustments. And, I was a scoffer, but I did stay here and I did do the work, and my life is amazing because of it. I have a really good life today. And my life isn't all, unicorns and rainbows, stuff happens, it's sometimes it feels like this tsunami of the other day, I said to somebody, a friend, I was kind of doing a 10th step on the phone with this friend of mine, and, he's like, what's going on? And I said, the shit fairy has come to stay, and I've given her the deluxe suite. And I felt badly because I know the answers and I know the solution, but, I had taken my will back. So as long as I can give up my will, go to my loving higher power, I'm going to be okay. And so will everybody else around me. So I just want to say thank you for letting me speak today. If you're thinking of doing this work or you're beginning doing the work, stick around. It is so worth it. Thank you.